This is a story with no happy ending, only heartbreak, questions, and a desperate search for justice. A young pregnant mother, 21-year-old Reagan Wilson, was found shot in her home, and she and her unborn son Silas end up tragically dying. And the man accused of this brutal double murder, well, police say they have the evidence on him. We're going to go through the investigation so far, and also we are going to sit down with Reagan's mother to get a better understanding of who she was and what may have happened here. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. What's the worst part about this story? Is it the fact that 21-year-old Reagan Wilson was killed, reportedly shot to death in her home, with authorities finding her body on June 5th? Is it the fact that she was pregnant with an unborn son named Silas Quinn Wilson, who also died? Or is it the fact that the apparent father of this baby, Sidney Frederick Wilson V, is accused of being the killer? 12 KFVS reporting that police and family say Sidney and Reagan were married but separated. He's now been arrested, facing 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of armed criminal action. So what's the worst part about this story? Maybe all of it. But that is the reality for the family and friends of the victims. And in a moment, I'm going to be bringing on Reagan's mother, Silas's grandmother, to talk about all this and get a better understanding of who Reagan was. But first, I want to lay out what we know based on the current reporting. So June 5th at 11:37 p.m., Lebanon police arrived to Reagan's home after receiving a report of a shooting. In fact, according to a probable cause statement in this case, which we're going to talk a lot about, a doorbell camera captured the gunshot sounds at 11:34 p.m. And inside, they find Reagan riddled with gunshot wounds. She later died at the hospital. The Lebanon PD employee who authored this probable cause statement said, "Whenever you see that many gunshots directed towards a victim, you're talking about a personal relationship, and it's, quote, overkill." Now, Silas, this unborn baby, apparently survived a little over a week, but died on June 13th. The probable cause statement stating, caused by a lack of blood flow and oxygen to the brain, often before or shortly after death. So how did they find Sidney the suspect? Why is he the suspect? Well, investigators come to find out that Sidney and Reagan had texted hours before the killings. And there are parts of the probable cause statement, by the way, that lay all of this out, but they're redacted. So we don't have a complete story, but through the lines, you can seem to understand what's going on here. Now, it seems that there may have been a discussion, a communication about not wanting him or his family to be somewhere, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But investigators look at video footage from Reagan's home, and according to the probable cause statement, quote, the video, which was dated June 5th, 2025 at 23:20 hours, showed what appeared to be a skinnier male subject walking down the right side of the residence if you're facing the house. The male subject was wearing a camo-colored hoodie-type shirt, lighter-colored pants, a face covering, and gloves. The male subject was carrying something between the arm and the body. The video was shown to a deputy who knew Redacted, and after watching the video, Redacted, who also knew S. Wilson well, Redacted, believed the person in the video to be him due to the way he was walking. In comparing the video from Redacted residence to another video obtained from a Goodwill store that S. Wilson visited recently, the walking pattern of the person in both videos appears to be very similar. Okay, so from there, investigators, they sit down with Sidney Wilson for an interview on June 7th. And essentially, they seem to suggest he wasn't being truthful. The statement claims that Sidney explained how he drove home, he receives a Facebook message from Redacted, so possibly or presumably Reagan, and he admits that this message made him upset. Then he claims that he was home when he received a phone call, leaves the residence at 12:41 a.m. on June 6th to go to Mercy, Lebanon. Now, he apparently tells investigators that he previously owned a firearm but had sold it to some unknown person. Describes how this person had asked to sit down with him, and while he was eating, they talk and makes the decision to sell him the gun. But then the statement says this, quote, it was noted that the weapon that shot Redacted was a Redacted, and after sending a bullet used in the shooting to the Missouri State Highway Patrol to see what type of weapons could have fired the bullet, a Redacted was on that list. S. Wilson was able to provide 2 dates that he was at from his banking records of April 12, 2025 and May 16, 2025, and stated that he believed it was the April date that he sold his gun. It should also be noted that through this investigation, I obtained video footage of the 2 times S. Wilson went to Redacted. I observed in both videos that S. Wilson orders his food and then leaves the business. He never sits down and never communicates with anyone other than the employees while ordering his food. So puts this idea of selling the gun into question. And then there's this. They collect the SD card from the surveillance camera to see if Sidney's alibi checks out. Quote, the two cameras in the residence are pointed at S. Wilson's back door, bedroom door, and the living room. In watching the video footage, S. Wilson was observed arriving home at 21:26 hours. S. Wilson goes to his room and closes the door at 21:39 hours. S. Wilson comes back out around 21:51 hours. He feeds the dogs and walks out of the camera view towards the other side of the house until 21:54 hours, when he re-enters his room and closes the door. At 00:41 hours on June 6, 2025, S. Wilson leaves his room and leaves the residence. It should be noted that when collecting the SD card at S. Wilson's residence, it was observed that there was a window inside of his bedroom. On June 12, 2025, S. Wilson was interviewed a second time and gave consent to search his cell phone. While searching the phone, it was observed on his Google Maps data that he had left his residence around 22:30 on June 5, 2025, and was on I-44 heading towards Lebanon. The data then drops as if the location data was manually shut off and comes back on, showing near Mercy, Lebanon at approximately 01:01 hours on June 6, 2025. This time conflicts with S. Wilson's original story of being home between the hours of 21:26 hours on June 5, 2025 to when he got the call about on June 6, 2025, leaving his residence at 00:41 hours. Investigators spoke with S. Wilson, and he advised he always has his cell phone with him. Now, apparently investigators conduct a search warrant of his home, and they apparently find fingerprints on the window from outside and said that that window looked, quote, recently disturbed. So now we're talking about maybe how he might have left the residence. They also take a look at his cell records, and it apparently shows his phone was around, quote, redacted residence at the time of the shooting. So presumably that's Reagan's place. Now the statement also indicates that during his initial interview, Sidney said he hadn't been to Lebanon since around May 20th. But location data from his Life 360 application apparently shows he was there on May 23rd and June 2nd. And then towards the end of this probable cause statement, there are these bombshells. So even though it's redacted, I think you can get a sense here. Quote, investigators learned from S. Wilson that he and Redacted was strained after she left him in December 2024. Investigators spoke with S. Wilson's Redacted, who advised on several occasions S. Wilson had made the statement that it would be easier if Redacted was dead. It should also be noted that during the time S. Wilson was at the hospital, Redacted family never heard him ask about the status of Redacted. During the entire investigation, S. Wilson has never once asked about the status of the investigation and where we were on locating a suspect in the investigation. He only asked about when he could get his vehicle back. Potentially very telling. So what about Wilson's criminal history? Okay, so we were able to use a powerful background checker to look him up. It's called Truthfinder. And the site pulled up information about Wilson, like places he's lived and who he's potentially related to, but we didn't find any prior criminal charges against him. By the way, Law&Crime, we partner with Truthfinder. We use it to get details on people involved in our stories, but even if you don't work in true crime, it can just be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. Why? It's one of the largest public records search services in the United States, and with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. So right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Now, Chief Jerry Harrison of the Lebanon Police Department in a statement said, "Our entire team mourns the loss of this young mother and child. Our team and our partners are disgusted by this loss of life and will relentlessly pursue justice for Reagan and her child." Okay, so now I want to bring on a special guest. I am joined by Sarah Ice. This is Reagan's mother. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time. I know this is an incredibly difficult moment for you and the family. Krista McKinney, Reagan's stepmom, was planning on joining as well, but I understand she's away, had some connectivity issues. But again, our hearts, our prayers, our thoughts are with you and the family. How are you? How's the family? How's everybody holding up right now?
Our main focus is remembering Reagan. And just the amazing person that she was and how she is continuing to touch lives, even after death. Her burial site is actually right by my house. And so I've made it a point every day that I pass that I say hi to her and I remember something, a memory, or something that she would say or what I think she would be doing. And then I pass the house where this awful tragedy happened on my way to work every day. And so I'm always just making sure that instead of dwelling on how tragic this is, that we are just remembering her and making sure that we're keeping her fun memory alive.
Yeah, I want to learn a little bit more about Reagan, and also how excited she must have been to be having Silas. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Reagan was my free-spirited kid. Her and her sister are super close. They were the same age for 8 days. And so there was never a Riley without a Reagan. And so they were always together. Whenever she was younger, she would put these outfits together and she would wear them with so much pride and they would look absolutely ridiculous. And she loved it. And she was fine with who she was. Her and I talked every day. We didn't miss a chance to talk. She would text me, "Hey mom, is this normal? Hey, does it make me a bad mom to be ready to have Silas? Because, into your pregnancy, you're super uncomfortable." And I told her, "You are with every mom out there that it just gets to the point where you're just ready." And I had dinner with her the night, that Thursday, her and her brother, Weston, and we went to have dinner. And it was just the best time. And I'm so grateful for that memory because I gave her a hug as we left and told Silas that I was ready to see him. And that was the last time that I saw her. She had his room completely ready, rearranged it probably 4 times just because she wanted everything perfect for whenever he got home.
She sounded like a beautiful person, obviously, yeah. A great daughter.
Yes.
And this shouldn't have happened. And this is a terrible, terrible situation. I appreciate you sharing the last moment that you had with her. Do you remember how you found out what happened?
I do. My husband travels a lot for work, and he happened to be away with the governor of Missouri. And we had just spoken and said goodnight and on the phone. And I had gone to bed about 11:15. And then I was asleep just a few minutes and got a phone call from Riley's boyfriend, Ross. Again, Riley's my oldest daughter. And I can still hear his voice playing in my head over and over. And he said, "Sarah, Reagan's been shot." And of course, waking up to that, I was like, okay, what? And he said, "Reagan's been shot. You need to get over here." And I just went into autopilot. I told my son that he needed to watch our youngest kiddo, who's 3. I said, "Your sister's been shot." And of course, he's like, "I'm not staying." So I went over to her house, which was across town, and I just prayed the whole way. But when I got there, my daughter Riley came to me and she said, "Mom, you can't go over there." So Riley lived less than a block away. She heard the shots that night and she texted Reagan and she said, "Reagan, are you okay? I heard gunshots." And Reagan didn't text her back, and they had been texting back and forth that night. And she said that she let a few minutes pass, and then her and Ross went over and they arrived at the same time as the police, and Riley tried to perform CPR on Reagan. And of course, that was, Reagan was already gone at that point. And later on at the hospital, Riley was still walking around with her shoes on, and they were covered in Reagan's blood. And that was just a really hard night because I had to then notify her dad, and watch just heartbreak. I was just watching heartbreak all around me.
Sarah, that is heartbreaking on so many different levels, and I'm so sorry that you and Riley and everyone had to go through that and are still going through that. Did you immediately suspect Sydney might be capable of this? I mean, he was ultimately arrested, and we just went through some of the evidence that investigators have against him. Did you immediately suspect that he might be responsible? Did you help investigators in their probe against him?
So no one wants to go that direction whenever you know someone. He had been to our house. Yes, they were split up. There wasn't anything. They were amicable. They spoke about Silas. As far as Reagan was concerned, they had a plan in place for whenever Silas was born, and she wanted to breastfeed, and she wanted to make sure that she was available to Silas during those first few months. And so my mind didn't want to go there, but I knew, and I even told them at the scene. I said, "You need to get to his house." Of course, I know how investigations work, and I know that emotions on my part were playing a huge role in things, but they ultimately did not go to his house, which is in another town about 20 minutes away at that time. Hindsight's 2020. I'm sure that they wish that they would have, but you can't just show up at someone's house, and I understand that. But my immediate thought was that it was him, because Reagan was loved. You don't just, in our town, this just doesn't happen. And she didn't have any enemies. Reagan would tell you what she thought, but it was always out of love. She would never upset someone to the point of them wanting to murder her.
Was he ever violent? Did he ever give a preview that he might allegedly do something like this? And if he did this, what do you think spurred it? I mean, I read this probable cause statement that talked about there was some communication where there was a request that he no longer be around, a Facebook message of some kind. Did he ever give any kind of indication, a sign that he might have been violent in the past? And what do you think, if the evidence proves he did this, why it happened?
Reagan was an open book, would just kind of tell you everything. And if she didn't tell me, she definitely told her sister. And we have had conversations, and nothing more than, the new marriage couple arguments. Reagan had said that Sydney had yelled at her before, but that's pretty normal in a new marriage. But nothing that was considered violence. We had this man in our home, and trusted him to be there whenever we weren't even there, because he did some construction, and they were newly married, and we needed some things done. So we wanted to help them out, and he did a great job. This was not a side of him that we had ever seen or even suspected. But the message that night was she didn't feel comfortable with him being in the room whenever she was giving birth. She wanted it to be an experience that she enjoyed and that she loved, that was stress-free as much as it could be, giving birth. And she wasn't close to his family and didn't want them there. And in fact, she even told her grandparents that she didn't want them there. The only ones she wanted there were her sister, myself, and her significant other at the time. So it was a surprise because we hadn't seen this side of him, but it was the only thing that made sense.
Why did they separate?
They had planned on having Silas. This was not a surprise pregnancy. This was something that they did plan. Sydney had said that he didn't want kids, but Reagan, whenever she had her mind set to something, that she was relentless, and she didn't give up. So ultimately, they agreed that they would start trying. It happened very quickly, but they also got married very quickly. They met in March, I believe, and they were married in May, and then they were pregnant by September, I believe. So very quick. And Reagan said, "I can't put my finger on it, Mom. I just can't be around him." I asked why, and she said, "I can't explain it. It just makes me sick." And so honestly, I kind of chalked it up to pregnancy hormones at first. And then once they were split, I could see the relief in her life, that she did feel better, and she started working again. And it just, that spark kind of came back into her life, where she was more of that bubbly Reagan.
Have you been in contact with his family after all this?
I have. I have that night reached out to Sydney's mom, and I had the unfortunate position to tell her that Sydney had been arrested, and I heard her heart shatter. I truly believe that she was blindsided by this and that she did not know anything. I still don't think that has set in. And as a mom who has lost her daughter. She just lost her son, in that moment. And I was the one that delivered that blow, and it was not an intentional thing. It wasn't something that I did because I was being vindictive. She truly did not know. We're doing a scholarship fund for Reagan, and she had reached out and asked if her and Sydney could have bracelets. And we had literally just gotten the news that Sydney had been arrested. So I knew in that moment she did not know.
Talk about it so many times, how these crimes affect all different kinds of families that are connected. What has law enforcement told you so far about this investigation? And have they given you a preview of what to expect?
First off, I want to thank all of the law enforcement officers. My husband works for the Highway Patrol, so this was a family affair. Like they truly took their time because they wanted to get things right, and they kept telling us, be patient. We want to get this right. We want to make sure that we cover all of our bases, that we run down every lead. I believe at one time there was like 120 different leads they were running down at one time. And so I do want to thank them, because I know that this wasn't just another case to them. This was important. And I think a lot of that is because we're just normal people, and living normal lives. And I think at any point they could see that this could happen to them. And so it was very internalized. But they've let us know that, right now the judge has stuck with no bond, and we appreciate that. And we're hopeful that they will stick with that at the next bond hearing, which is on Monday. And we have been on pins and needles because of our suspicions. Nothing that law enforcement could confirm or deny, but we had our own suspicions, and we've been on pins and needles. And it just feels like a sigh of relief because we feel safe. And they've walked us through, what we can expect. But I really think that at this point we have become accustomed to expecting the unexpected, and we are prepared either way. My husband and I have had conversations of, we have all these questions, but what if we don't get those answers? Are we still going to be okay? And honestly, even if we have answers as to why or motive or, why she even was outside that night, it's not going to bring her back. It's not going to bring Silas back. And right now we're just happy that, he is in custody.
Sarah, if people watching this want to help you or the family in some way, what can they do? I mean, obviously you coming on here, talking more about Reagan, talking about Silas, talking about this investigation, it definitely sheds a light and helps explain. And I think so many times we focus on the criminal case and the law. One of the things I welcome is family members to speak to, give a voice to the person who's no longer here. And we get a better sense of who Reagan was. What can people do to help if they want to?
First off, we will accept all the prayers that we can get. We have leaned very heavily on our faith. Reagan knew Jesus, and she would be the one singing praise and worship songs the loudest right next to me at church. But also, Reagan wanted to help others, and she graduated school early, high school early, and immediately became a CNA, and then went on to be a med tech. And her ultimate goal was to go into nursing. Through a whim, the nudge of the Holy Spirit, I'm not sure what it was, but I took out life insurance policy on Reagan for work, and I did on all the kids. And this was, I'm going to be 41 on Monday, and it's something I've never done. And I just decided, hey, I probably should do this. And so through donations and the Missouri Crime Victims Fund, Reagan and our church, Reagan's funeral was completely paid for. We had donations come in for her headstone as well. And so with this $5,000, her dad my husband and Krista, her stepmom, have decided that we wanted to start a scholarship for anyone locally that would be going into healthcare. And we're like, 5,000 isn't much, but it's something. And our local hospital, Mercy, has said that they would help and waive some of those administrative fees in order to get the scholarship started, which we're very grateful for. But then we had some of these bracelets made just to remember Reagan, just because we wanted justice for Reagan and Silas. And I don't know if I can show you, but there's what they are. And so people were asking, like, can we buy them? And we're like, well, we don't want to profit from something that is so tragic. So we were like, if you would like to make a donation towards this scholarship fund, we would love that. And then, if not, you can still have a bracelet, because we still want her to be remembered.
Right.
And the outpouring of people who just want to help and just want to be a part of something good despite this tragedy has been amazing. And it's not just been our community, it's been outside of our community as well. And it just warms my heart to know that she is touching lives all over the place. And she is continuing to just impact lives in such a good way. And so we have some of these bracelets, and we have a small account set up. So if anyone would like to donate to this scholarship, that would be wonderful. And if not, just keep praying. Keep her name alive. If anyone knows her, we love hearing funny stories about her. Even stories that moms probably shouldn't hear, that teenage girls did whenever they were out being teenagers. It still makes me laugh, because that was her. That was just a part of life that I got to experience with her.
Well, you're definitely keeping her memory alive. That is amazing. That is beautiful. Putting this out here on Sidebar, hopefully you get even more support. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time. And again, from all of us here, we are sending our best, our prayers, our well wishes to you and the entire family. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, absolutely. I just love talking about her.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.